couple men. They were guards. You have to think there's prisoners and then there's guards around the prisoners. And they were trying to pick up vegetables from that market for the prison camp. And my mother just happened to recognize one or two people. And she tried to get in contact, with what was going on because she knew in what prison camp, our dad was. And I think it's very hard to remember it after a long time, but I remember that we did make contact. And my mother, we used to ask actually um, the Russian guards into our home, and we had bribed them with alcohol, whiskey,
I thought it was vodka.
vodka, yeah, lots of vodka.
Lots of vodka.
And I remember we got them drunk in order to get sent information, letters of information to the prison camp. And they would return, and on the other hand, information from the prison camp, like the people that died and stuff like that. And my mother was probably the only connection to this camp. And every week they would come, we would get those Russians drunk every week. And I would chop up lots of onions, because they couldn't come back, that they were smelling of alcohol because they were a little bit afraid. Yeah, and then, the thing about it is, well, my mother was getting them drunk, and I was going out and delivering all the letters. She had a correspondence of I don't know how many hundreds of people. All of, eventually we got a list of all the people that were in the camp. So my mother contacted all these people because they were so very happy that where their husband was. Some of these didn't even know where their husbands was. And, they were all wonderful. I mean, they reciprocated later on. Like I spent one summer on a flower farm, on a carnation, where they grew carnations and stuff. And, we got, you have to think, after the war we didn't have very much. And, I got treated and, like food and everything you can think of, whatever. And drugs. My mother had a connection to drugs because they needed drugs in the prison camp. Most of them had TB, they were sick. And yeah, we smuggled in drugs, we smuggled in letters, we smuggled out letters, and then for some reason the Americans got interested in this. I don't know how the connection started. I don't remember anymore. I would have to ask my mother. But the Untersuchungsausschuss of freie Juristen, that means these were lawyers that had like formed an organization that were interested what was going on in these prison camps and stuff like that. And they were actually, this came from Berlin, because we had relatives in Berlin. And I don't know, my mother gave a lot of information to them. And that's how come a lot of the stuff came out what went on in the camps and who died and stuff like that. And that made it actually easier in the end because my mother had to leave suddenly because the communists, you have no idea what it's like under communism, everybody spies on everybody else. She had to leave, I remember, in the middle of the night, and they helped her smuggle into Berlin. And I stayed with my grandmother and my two younger brothers in Germany because I couldn't go along. I went much later along, but it wasn't easy. Actually, they had my mother arrested, and she spent at least one night in a cellar that was half filled with water. I mean, when she got out, they told her she had to leave right then and there. She left with nothing. They tried to really help her out, trying to get her into West Germany. So, but and that's how eventually we all wound up in West Germany. First I sent my younger brother, my younger brother I sent first, and then I went, and then my grandmother came over. She brought the boy that we had adopted, Uwe.
Did you guys have any like Stasis that were in your community that you
Oh,
had to report
absolutely,
to?
absolutely.
And you have to
That's what
report to
these
them
people are.
directly?
Absolutely. That's what my mother, they are really terrible. You have no idea how terrible they are. And that's why my mother got arrested. They had her overnight, and she had to leave. Because they would have just put her in the prison camp. As a matter of fact, after we were all in Berlin, uh, I don't know who told it to my mother that we should never get close to the East-West Berlin border. That's before they had the wall up, because they're trying to catch these people, to be very careful, to make friends, like at that time, people from East Germany could come over in cars, and some people would disappear, and they were taken back to East Germany, and they were put in prison camps. I mean, I know I had a couple of dates, but I got so suspicious that I was actually afraid, after it didn't sit right with me, and he picked me up in the car, and people didn't have a lot of cars, and I thought, how come he's got a car? I was going to go on a date with him, and I said, how come he's got a car? Because, and then when he picked me up, there was another guy sitting in the back, he introduced as a professor from the University of Berlin. And I thought there was just something really wrong. And I said, well, I said, I have to, before we can go out, I mean, you don't pick up a girl on a date with another guy in the back of the car. And so that's what I really remember. I said, well, I have to stop at my aunt's place before we go on a date. And I left out of this car and I never went back. I went up to my aunt's house and I said, I think these are bad people. And I says, I don't think I want to go back out there, And and I stayed there, and then he contacted me later by telephone. And I said, well, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think we should be dating, My parents really don't approve of it. That was sort of the acceptable thing to say. But I swear